Ready? Okay, we'll call the meeting in order. The Newman City Council and Newman Redevelopment Agency, February 8th, 2005. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please bow your heads and join me in prayer. In God we trust. Those simple words on the surface of our currency. Let us be mindful and thankful to the God we serve. Amen.
Amen. We have roll call, please.
Present.
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 Present. Present. Item 5, declaration of conflicts of interest. Seeing none. Item 6, ceremonial matters. We have a proclamation in honor of Black History Month. Councilmember Parker will help me with this proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It has been an annual occasion since serving on the council, written a proclamation acknowledging Black History Month, which reads as follows. Whereas the city of Newman is a cordial community of diverse cultures and shared democratic ideals, and whereas the city of Newman recognizes the celebrated history of paying tribute to its citizens that have rendered their time and talent for the betterment of our community through its growth and development, and whereas the observance of African American history brings forth a continued effort to overcome prejudices and teach tolerance, ensuring a basis for better understanding and cooperation amongst our citizens. And whereas the month of February has been established nationally as Black History Month, and the city of Newman wishes to join its African American residents in commemoration of this month.
Now therefore, I, John Fantasia, Mayor of the City of Newman, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2005 as Black History Month in the City of Newman. Tim, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Item 7, items from the public, non-agenda items. If anybody has anything that is not on the posted agenda, now is the time. Jim, did you like to? I know you have something to razz us about, I hear.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Fantasia, City Council. I'm Jim DiMartini, and I've put in each of your places a copy of a letter we received from the City of Houston. And I'm here today to try and encourage you to come up with some sort of policy or something to send to the board, because other cities are also doing it. I've talked to the Mayor of Modesto, David Keller, Mayor of Patterson is sending a letter, and the City of Ceres. And the draft ordinance has not been written yet. Our county council, Mick Krosnick, said he was going to work on it tomorrow. There were some significant problems with the last ordinance, and I couldn't support it, and 2 other board members agreed with me, so we sent it back. And it primarily focused around licensing cats. And Supervisor O'Brien's objection was that the cities, like yourself, who would be bound by this ordinance, were not properly consulted and didn't have significant input before the ordinance was voted on. So we're back to where we started on this, and I think no ordinance is better than a bad one. So if you could come to some consensus, or if you could find it within you to write a letter to the board expressing anything that is of your concern, we would appreciate that. Is the draft of the ordinance, when it is written, I will send it to you. That doesn't mean that that's what's going to be the final ordinance. But we will have at least one public meeting about it, and I will be sure that the City of Newman is notified, so you will be able to send a representative to express the concerns of the city. This ordinance will concern spaying and neutering of dogs, licensing, breeding fees, that's something new, the breeding fees. Whether or not you want that to extend to cats. I know the draft ordinance is going to contain a provision where cat licenses would be voluntary rather than mandatory. And that was the big stickler with the last one, because forcing people to license cats just wasn't, I didn't feel it was going to work. So you have a sample of what City of Houston sent, and should you take it up at a council meeting and perhaps send us a letter with any concerns that you have. At the very least, I would ask you to at least send a letter saying that you would like to have input on the ordinance. Even if you don't have anything specific that you're objecting to, at least that. That way we would know that the cities have been consulted, they're allowed to have their input. So this ordinance that you would be bound by, should you continue to have your services provided by Stanislaus County, that you're satisfied with it.
So Supervisor, they're in opposition to the ordinance as was written originally, right? The original one, that's what,
Yes,
This
this
is
is
the way it was written, and it went back and...
Well, the way it was written was something I felt was unenforceable, and that they were not consulted about the ordinance.
Right.
And this has been, as you know, some of the policy of Stanislaus County at times is to ram stuff through the cities without input from the cities. And this is a policy that is changed now. We've got myself and O'Brien on the board now, and Supervisor Grover, who's the chairman this year, feels the same way, that we're not going to pass ordinances that bind the cities to something without proper consulting them. So this was, I had talked to Tom at the Stancog meeting, and in fact Tim was there at the meeting too, as he represents Newman, and he had told me that they were not notified, had no input, and all of a sudden this ordinance was there that they were going to have to adhere to, and they didn't like it, and I didn't like it, and I think here's your chance to voice whatever objections or any suggestions that you might have. Okay?
Thank you, Supervisor DiMartini. We'll direct staff to put this on our next agenda for discussion and a possible ordinance. Is there any other non-agenda items? Seeing none agenda items, when an item comes before us, if you'd like to comment, please raise your hand, come to the podium, state your name and address, and please try to keep your comments under 3 minutes. Item 8, public hearings, we have none. Item 9, consent calendar. Item A, approval of warrants. Item B, approval of minutes of the January 18th, 2005 special meeting and the January 25th, 2005 regular meeting.
I just need to pull item 028138 to precision inspection. Our tenants in my building, 1220 Main Street.
Okay, so noted. Could we have some direction on the rest of the consent calendar?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And for the 2 items that Charles mentioned, 028138, do we have direction on that?
Yes, sir. Once again, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4 with 1 abstaining. Item 10 under regular business. Item A, adopt resolution number 2005, next number. A resolution authorizing subdivision improvements in the Hearthstone Ranch subdivision and authorizing John Fantasy as mayor and John C. French as city clerk to record a notice of completion, Hearthstone Ranch Units 3 and 4.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. As stated in the report, SEM Homes of California are requesting acceptance of the site improvements at Hearthstone Ranch Units 3 and 4. Track improvements have been completed. All the undergrounding and surface improvements have been completed per job plans, specs, and inspected and accepted as stated in the precision inspections memorandum. If you have any questions, I would attempt to answer them.
Ernie, the only question I have is on Highway 33, when it rained last week, there was a big puddle right there where Jensen Road goes in. Does that have anything to do with this?
No, I believe there's 3 separate bonds, isn't there, Michael?
Yeah, they're actually intersection bond and then Sherman Parkway bond and then in-track bond. But we can address that when I report on the city council report. Okay, thank you.
Ernie, I noticed today they were paving. Looks like they got the middles done and they just got look like the east side to finish, maybe tomorrow.
Yes, they, seems like they wait until the weather starts turning bad. It gets foggy or a little bit of rain or something. That's when they show up instead of when it's nice and sunny, but I guess they'll get it done.
Yeah, look, I went by there earlier in the day and they had actually ground down, both lanes of the highway, and I went
Yes.
back through there about 5:15 just to see what's going on. They had paved the 2 main lanes and I got the sides to pave, but it's looking good.
Yeah, work's going on. It's continuing.
Thank you. If there's no more discussion, could we have some direction on this item?
I so move that we approve adoption resolution number 2005, next number, a resolution approving subdivision improvements in the Hearthstone Ranch subdivision and authorizing John Fanazea as mayor and John C. French as city clerk to record a notice of completion, Hearthstone Ranch units 3 and 4.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Item 11, items from the city manager and staff. Or acting city manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, you have already touched on one of the items I was going to discuss tonight, and that is the Highway 33 intersection. We did get a final pave out there. The only remaining item left is striping. They indicated that that should be striped by Friday, and Sherman Parkway Highway 33 intersection could be open as soon as Friday. Typically, Caltrans policy is not to open new intersections before a weekend. We'll see how that goes, and it may be Tuesday due to Caltrans policies on that.
Michael, before you leave that, once again, I addressed that low spot that was there. Is that going to be paved over?
We were unaware of that, but staff and Ernie and I can go out and take a look at it. That's an unincorporated area of the county on there, but we can make sure that there's no puddling out there. We can make it a public health and safety issue and have the developer go out there and take care of that.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Did you see that?
I didn't go out there today. I did not.
Right when you turn off the 33 and start in there, heading from the south, turning back to the east. When it rained, there was a large puddle that stayed there for a long time. If that continues, that piece of asphalt will deteriorate over a short period of time,
Okay.
whether it's our responsibility or Caltrans.
That is within the Caltrans right away, but again, staff will investigate it, get a letter out to Caltrans, and issue a public health and safety concern and go forward from there.
Thank you.
Sure. With that, we have received the plans for the Sherman Ranch Park. Ernie and I have reviewed those today. A few minor modifications, including we want a permanent barbecue pit out there for a nice big picnic structure that's going to be there. There are also going to be barbecue pits on a little post all throughout there. There'll be 3 or 4 of those throughout the thing. We're increasing the size of the restroom facilities and snack bar. So we've done that review, and we think we've come up with a pretty good plan. So they should be going to construction drawings pretty soon and be seeing some hydro seeding and finishing out that basin as soon as this thing dries out. So that park will start coming to fruition in the coming months. And in the spring, you will see it hydro seeded and the grass coming up, and then shortly after that, you'll start seeing the sidewalk going and those issues.
Michael, the barbecue pits, will it be like the city park now? We'll have a picnic table and a barbecue at each spot, or?
We're going to have a combination, yes. There will be picnic tables with the barbecue at some of those spots, and then under the big canopy structure, there will be a permanent, with some kind of brick masonry barbecue pit there. We're looking at something that's 5 foot by 10 foot. We're looking at a pretty big picnic structure, 30 foot by 40 foot picnic structure. Our vision, our staff's vision for this park is, we want a place that families can go out and have birthday parties and celebrations and pack 40, 50 people into a little area there and have a barbecue pit that can serve that many people, so people aren't lugging out their Webers, and having to do that. That's going to be an amenity for the real community that they can get out there and barbecue and have these amenities already there in place. You see them at all the other community parks throughout, California and the Bay Area, so. And even Pioneer Park has something similar. So.
That'll be nice, because our 2 parks, the Lions Park and the city park now.
Yes.
They're, on weekends, people are always renting those, so that'd be really nice, yeah, have another facility.
Yeah, there'll be probably half dozen or more total barbecue pits out there. Mostly the smaller ones and the big one, as I had previously indicated.
Michael, question, you said the sidewalks would be put in shortly?
Yeah, they're going to be moving forward with this project. One of the builders is already running out of lots, and that's a condition on their thing that they need to be going forward curb gutters. And
Would that, coming down Hills Ferry, that would be sidewalks on Hills Ferry?
there's a 9-foot meandering sidewalk along Hills Ferry.
And there's a break in the property, would that sidewalk go all the way down to Driscoll?
Yeah, that property is under a different ownership.
Right.
However, there is a planning application in for that site to subdivide it. So that sidewalk would go in with
Yeah, but just
With
seems,
the
if
property.
there's a break in the sidewalk, it's just not very convenient for people.
we can work with the developer and see if we can get them to pour it and do it as a reimbursement agreement. We know who the applicant is for that second property. When you work with economies of scale, they may want to do it then, save them money over in the long run. So.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Excuse me. The last issue, or the last item I was just going to mention was for the community. We did have our first general plan workshop this past weekend. I did hand out a memo to all the council members expressing some of my sentiment of how the process is going. So I just wanted to present that. We do have our second workshop scheduled for this Saturday, February 12th at 9 a.m. That will be at the Firehouse at Kern and Highway 33. It begins at 9 a.m. And typically we anticipate it's going to go about 3 hours, so it'll be done about noon. So we're not taking up a whole Saturday for any of the citizens that want to get involved. And this is a great opportunity for you to get involved in the planning process for your community and set the vision for Newman 2025. So
Michael, I noticed on this roster, looks like there's a total of 41 people that signed it.
that's correct.
And what I'm thinking, there's a lot of people that didn't sign it. And I guess that's just a personal thing, but what I'm saying is, I think there were people there that,
There were a few people that were there that didn't sign it, but they weren't participating in the exercises. Everybody that was participating in the
They signed.
exercises
okay.
did move forward
They were
and
just
sign that. We
sure.
asked out loud, and we think we got everybody that was participating.
Yeah, 'cause I don't know what the total number was, but it was a great turnout.
Yeah. We, all told, there was near 50 people in that room.
Thank you.
I don't have any other items at this time.
Thank you, Michael. Any other staff reports? Chief?
Evening, Mayor and City Council. Last time you were gracious enough to grant me a stop sign, but I'm going to stop there. Looking at Barrington is what we, I don't know, worked on that all day. Anyway, what we're looking at is, Judy, can you bring up a couple of things? We're looking at this for Barrington as an option, looking kind of direction from the council. This is over in Modesto. It's off of Sheldon near Prescott. It's in a residential neighborhood. And it's kind of similar to the situation that we're facing here in Barrington. This is one of the first plateau bumps you come up. It's about 12 feet wide,
12 feet wide.
and it goes the whole length of the roadway. It's raised up about, what,
Goes up to about 6-7 inches.
6 to 7 inches on at the
center.
center portion, but it's a gradual. It's not one of those like those parking lot traffic
Real hard
devices.
bumps.
So not a real hard bump. It does slow traffic down. And so we're kind of looking at this. You also see it striped. There's also some signage you'll see in one of the other pictures. And if you'll also notice it for during the night, it also has the reflectors in the roadway itself. So it's pretty well marked. We're looking at this is coming off of Prescott, going down Sheldon here. As you can tell, again, T intersections like we're looking at Barrington. It does come up against a park, although we don't have pictures of that. Notice that we do have a sign here. They're bringing traffic down to about 15 miles an hour. And Ernie said that when he came over with his truck that 15 miles an hour was a really reasonable speed for that. You might even want to go down a little bit more. So what we're looking at is This is just pretty much just asphalt itself, you know, so you're not looking at something high-tech. We're not looking at, it's something that's permanent. It's something that we're not going to have to regulate by an officer being present to try and cite to get traffic down. It's just another option for you guys to kind of take a look at, and we're trying to get direction from you folks. We're looking at about 3 of these. We're looking at one that's probably going in this side of Ready, just before you reach into the park, so that the traffic could be slowed down. You're liable to have kids in that area walking over to the park. And we're looking at a second one just about midway, and it would be right by the, we don't have pictures of that, but this is still, you know what that park looks like. So about midway, about where those basketball courts are, we'd be looking at a second one there. And then towards the end of that park, right there where it currently borders the fenced area, would be a third one. That way people would be coming down that area there, because we're looking at, in the future, a school possibly being in that section that's now a basin. So we're looking at land use there and traffic control that's not only going to help us now in our park. It's going to be a really nice park, but it's also going to be able to slow the traffic down. So the speeds that you're going to be looking at are about 10 miles an hour, 10 to 15 miles an hour. They're not going to be able to get these great massive speed, because you're looking at from Barrington over to Sherman Ranch. It's almost about a half mile. It's quite a stretch. And then if you don't hit that stop sign that's there, Sherman Parkway is a nice long route, but we're going to have to address that as time goes by. Right now, I'm looking at Barrington as being one of our options. A little bit more pricier than a stop sign, though. We're looking at Ernie and I kind of figured this up, and come up to about 8,000, I think, is what he was telling me. Unless we can get some help from maybe some of the developers that were that way. So.
Michael's job, that's
Yeah,
what-
Mike. Step right in, Michael. And I'll be happy to kind of answer any kind of questions you may have.
Ask him that, Mike.
Mike, excuse me, that $8,000 was for one, or that was for
That's for all 3.
For all 3?
Yes. So if we chose to just use 2, we're recommending 3. But basically what I'm looking for tonight is, before we invest a lot more time and energy on trying to look at this, if this is something you'd like us to pursue, or if it's something you'd like us to, because it might even be the upcoming budget we might be looking at. I don't know where the funds are going to be coming from at this point. So.
I like it, Mike, but how effective is it? I mean, if I was driving a car and I was speeding about 30 miles an hour, what would happen to my car when I hit that?
I'll tell you what. If you move back, you'll see one of the
What kind of car you were driving?
No, but I'm saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying these young
Well,
kids.
yeah, that's right, and I think they're going to be picking up a bumper.
Okay.
If you're going to go that fast, 35 over one of those things.
Okay, great. That's
But it's to be well marked, as you tell.
Well, I guess
and
it'll
it's
have
a
the
lot
desired
less,
effect,
lot
then,
less-
won't it?
Yeah.
Would that, or could that cause an accident?
Well, that's one of the things I was looking at when we had looked at this area here, and it hasn't really caused accidents over in that way. They haven't had accidents due to in that area, let alone just as a cause factor being these speed bumps. And if they did cause, I guess, a problem, basically, I guess it could be pretty much scraped off, right?
Hey, Chief, what were the 3 areas you said?
I was looking just before you reach the park, right there by Ready. Just before you reach Ready, there's a fire hydrant in Red Zone.
Street.
And then midway by the
Heading north.
where the basketball courts are, there's a kind of a natural walkway that kind of goes out to the street. And then the third one would be at the very end of the park as it now sits.
The very end of
Where
the
the
park, or
fence-
the end of the parking lot when that part's done? Or
Well, we were looking at the end of the park,
the
because
park
we're looking
itself?
what's going to be in there is on that particular side of the park is going to be the
water well and
Yeah.
the entrance into it, but it would be just past that last house.
Yeah.
on
Okay.
Right,
It's their existing house right there.
yeah,
Right.
just past it.
I think it's something to think about. Like I said, we'll go out and take a look. I always like
Sure.
to go out and look.
Well, I just want to make sure that, because there are other traffic things, but this is probably the most least expensive. They have roundabouts and
I think
things.
I'd like for us to explore avenues, because one of the things that you mentioned was in looking forward, as far as this being preliminary and our budget concerns, where this is just something that's coming at us. Because I don't really want us to just piecemeal neighborhood by neighborhood. I'd like for us to take an overall perspective, because the stop sign situation is something that's come back to us considerably several months, we go down and another stop sign, and I can see something similar where we want speed bumps in our neighborhood. So I think part of our process that we're looking at right now with our general plan update is mitigating traffic circulation patterns, specifically because as Sherman Parkway opens up, as Barrington opens up, I'd like for you to look at other alternatives in addition to what you've just shown us tonight for our overall type of program. And referring back to our community planning director, this is what we're encompassing as our town grows, as there is more traffic. And by the way, I saw somebody sneaking out this morning, Sherman Parkway. I saw they put 2 big tractors there. So you won't be able to slide out the back way until they're actually done. But I did see a car use that egress behind the barrier. So it's something that's coming up. But I would like for, in consideration of these speed bumps, because sometimes speed bumps aesthetically aren't the best looking things, that we also draw in line like the roundabouts and other.
Well, I think if you really take a look, if you ever have a chance to actually go down
look at this one?
take a look at that.
So that was
one.
on Prescott, right?
Yeah,
They're a little
off-
more
it's off
subtle.
of Prescott by Sheldon. It's just before you reach Stanford.
These are a little more subtle, I'm taking.
Yes. Well, actually, because you have more of a ease of a landing there, because it takes, you're going up 6 inches, but you're doing it over a 12-foot span over the normal speed bump, which is what, about maybe 3 feet?
Well, the paint and the reflectors are something that are talked about in slowing down in this visual that makes people look as there's something in the road. Oh yeah, there's a speed bump, and I'm going to slow down. So I
And
kinda
this
like
road being the length that it is, so we're gonna have to look at some kind of traffic control measures on this road, just because of the uses that are going to be there. That park is now going to be utilized, I think, a lot more than it has in the past when it gets filled out. And the traffic is really going to change when a school does get built over there. That's just, as we've noticed in our other 3 school sites that we have currently, it really does change the traffic patterns. So right now I'm just looking at direction, not looking at trying to spend any money, just food for thought at this point, and seeing if this is something you might want us to look a little bit forward on. We will look at other measures as well, but to me this was one that made a big
impact.
I think a big impact. Because number one is, these things are out there 24/7, and the officer doesn't have to be coming up to try and monitor this traffic and keep it controlled. So it works out well.
We'll take a look at that one.
Good. Now the other one was kind of brought to me a little bit by the mayor. So this was about cars for sale on private property. And currently our ordinance that we have in place pretty much just takes care of cars that are parked on the roadway itself. And we don't have anything other than a zoning ordinance to really address cars that are on private property that are for sale. And as an example would be Mr. Souza's lot right here at the corner of Merced and N Street right there, the scales. We get a lot of cars that are parked there, and we get to take some calls, and we have a letter. And the way our law currently reads, it actually puts the burden to move the cars on the landowner. He can be cited. Sometimes he doesn't even have knowledge that these vehicles are out there. He doesn't monitor his property 24/7. So this would give us some authority. I'm looking at something that would be pretty much on the commercial area that we have in our Highway 33 corridor, something at least in that business district that we'd be looking at trying to regulate cars for sale. I don't, unless the council would really like, I don't think we would really want to regulate cars like in the residential area so much.
No, I think it's a good idea, especially on the highway. And some Sundays on a nice sunny day, I mean, sometimes there's like 10, 15 cars there. Like
I know they're kind of going with our used car lot.
Yeah, some people thought it was, and sometimes they park so close in that corner, it's kind of a traffic hazard too to see, traffic turning or whichever way. So that's, I mean, I've heard it not only from the property owner, from a lot of other citizens too. That
Right, and
kind of
this would give us the authority if we make a change in our current ordinance to cover that. Would actually go after the vehicle owner instead of after the landowner himself.
Mm-hmm.
So, if that's something the council would have some desire on, then we would like to see if that would be on pursuing that and bringing that back to you to future council meeting after we go through our legal
ramification.
That's right, or corrections.
Correct.
He's very nice to me.
Now, I personally would like to see us pursue that, come up with something to address that problem for sure. That one spot's bad.
I just want to make sure, are we really mostly concerned about vehicles in the retail and commercial areas? We're not looking at residential in any way, shape,
I wouldn't
or
think,
form?
unless
Okay.
some guy tries to start a used car lot in his front of his house, but, you know.
Well,
obviously-
we have
We have
other
zoning
zoning ordinances to be able to
Yeah,
actually take care of
If
that issue.
somebody wants to have a car for sale parked in front of their house, well, that's, you know.
Well, we have it for,
Up to
if we really want to go after that, if we park it on the street, then we'd be able to regulate it. It's only, I'm looking at private property that now sits, because we don't have any authority at this point. So if that's the direction you'd like me to pursue, then I will contact League of Cities and others to get an ordinance that would,
Sounds good.
great. Thank you very much, and I didn't take up a whole bunch of time.
Thank you, Chief. Ernie, did you have something?
Yes, I do have 3 informational items. Yesterday we had a pre-construction conference for a sidewalk infill project. So within the next couple of weeks we're going to get going on that. We're trying to get all the contracts signed and all the paperwork in place. Also tomorrow afternoon everyone is meeting in Riverbank, all the cities that are participating in the CNG stations and the vehicle purchase. And so tomorrow afternoon we're going to meet with a consultant that has access to about 300 CNG vehicles. So and Friday, I believe, is when they're having a show down in Visalia. So I'm going to be sending someone to go down and review those vehicles, and also scheduling the delivery of the CNG equipment for gas station. We're the ones who, in order to keep the costs down, we're going to actually do the trenching for PG&E, and then this company will come in and do all the connections to the natural gas main that runs along the alley there by the Waterworks Department, and get that completed and get moving on that. And we're also working on RFPs for contract services for parks and the large lawn areas. So I'm going to see if I can have that scheduled to come before you the first meeting in March. I'm also obtaining quotes from dealers as far as for the lawn mowing equipment, so you can take a look and see how much the costs are going to be if we stayed in and did our own maintenance, but it's going to cost to replace all the equipment. Any questions?
Ernie, on the CNG filling, is it going to be inside the yard, or is it going to be just in the alley there? Is it going to be something where they just pull up in the alley, or?
Well, what it is, it's a slow fill station,
Okay,
so
so
the
it'll be
vehicles
inside,
have to be hooked up, and they fill up overnight. And there's a concrete slab area there where we used to have the convault, where we used to pump
Right.
our own gas, and that's where we're going to be, the area we're going to be using. The electrical power is there, so everything works out well.
It'll be parked inside the gate there.
That's correct.
Hey, Ernie, quick question with regards to the contracting out on the parks that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Man hours, what do you guys look at per week, roughly, to maintain the parks?
At the present time, during the peak, during the summertime, it takes 2 guys with the 2 mowers that we've got 2 days to complete all the parks. But that was before we got the Lucas Park, the park there for Creek Bridge, and now we're getting Ranchwood. So, and
Get 'em
Sherman
added
is
on day.
coming along the way also. So we've added about 30 acres, I believe.
Okay. All right. But you'll have all that when we come back with that contracting out on the parks? as far
Yes,
as
I will
the
have
total-
a
the
try to have
total
it.
man-hour breakdown and everything else.
I'll try to have a complete report for you showing you what we've got today and the staffing and the man hours and the shape of our equipment and what it's going to take to replace all that. And along with that, the bids from the different companies to do the work.
When do you guys plan, when's the bid process close? When are you guys gonna close that for people turning in?
I believe it closes the first Monday in March, I believe, because I needed a week to prepare the report to come before council, and I don't know when's their first council meeting in March.
That'd be exactly 1 week. It'd be eighth. Yep.
So I believe it's March the 1st.
You know what I'd like to see with that cost comparison, when you evaluate that, is what it would be in comparison to part-time staff or full-time staff. So while you're going through that deliberation for contracting out,
Okay.
show us the differential there.
Okay.
Ernie, is there a consideration upsizing equipment since we've got more parks? Is that possible?
Of
Larger, faster equipment?
oh yes, we're going to need it because, for example, there at the Creek Bridge Park, with that deep area there, if it's early in the morning and the grass is wet, our little lawnmowers won't climb that hill. So we're looking at a larger tractor with a set of gang mowers to pull behind it.
The little lawnmower that thought it could.
Yeah, that's it.
Other questions for Ernie? Thank you, Ernie.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay.
Item 12, items from city council members. Mike?
I've got two of them. I'd like to discuss one now and save one till last, if possible. Is that all right?
I guess.
Okay. First one is Michael's memo about the general plan update. In reading over it, it sounds like he has some reservations about what we're getting from our general plan company, and I'd like a little further discussion on that, if you want to discuss it some more.
Sure, Councilman. I as your community development director, it's my responsibility to keep you informed on this update of the process that's going on. To date, I've found some what I consider to be serious flaws, miscues, and just unprofessionalism by our consulting firm. They are itemized in there. Similar things could be included at the PowerPoint presentation that was done for you on January 18th. It was very generic. Even when they identified local issues, they didn't identify local issues. They were very generic terms. They didn't really bring anything that was specific or unique to Newman. One case could have been Ring Road. You know, if they would have brought that word up, hey, then we would have known they would have been talking about Newman, because that's something we went around last time with. So the interview committee, when they interviewed this team, there was 2 persons that were involved during the interview. The one that was probably, that I consider the most dynamic, the one who was the best presenter and facilitator, is not even contracted with Quadnoff, the lead firm. My conversation with him last week leads me to believe that he may not get under contract with Quadnoff, which brings some red flags for me. I don't feel that their presentations did the best to facilitate conversation and discussion amongst the Planning Commission and City Council at that first meeting. I think they threw out open-ended questions and expected the council and the commission to respond to them. Good facilitators know how to elicit and draw out comments and questions and help people find their words that they're looking for inside, and to further expand upon their initial comment. It also would lead to further discussion amongst the group, meaning the Planning Commission and the City Council. The workshop, before the 2 workshops, I had to call them both times and ask them for agendas, and this is 3 days before the workshops. We want to staff's opinion is we want to get these things out to all our committees and citizens that have requested this information ahead of time. I have to call them and ask them, and they'll say, okay, let me get one together for you. Well, that leads me to believe they haven't even planned the workshop yet, and it's 3 days before it. The workshops that have been done, Saturday's workshop was very generic. I mean, it's a standard little workshop. Even then, it could have been improved upon. They could have spent some time in an educational mode at the very beginning, talking to the citizens that were already there. I have heard from other members of the Technical Advisory Committee that they believe the consultant hasn't even given them a good grasp of what their job is going to be, what their role is going to be. I've also heard that from planning commissioners who feel that they don't even have a role in this process. And there is a role. There's very distinct roles for each committee. The Technical Advisory Committee is doing one thing, the Planning Commission is doing another, and ultimately the City Council has final say and has its role and responsibility. I don't think they clearly define those. I don't think they made every committee member and council member aware of what that is and made them comfortable so that they go into the process knowing what their role is going to be. If you don't know what your role is going to be as you go into the process, you kind of muddle through it. You're just kind of like, what am I supposed to do? Without clearly defining that.
Have you talked to them since Saturday, Michael, with your concerns?
I have not talked to them yet. I wanted to have this conversation with you as the council. And partly because, it's their responsibility to keep in conversation with staff. Yes, it's my responsibility to oversee them and make sure they're doing the same thing. But I shouldn't be having to chase these people and say, wait a minute, keep me involved. That's their job to keep the city involved in this process. They are working for us. They need to keep us involved in the process. Not me begging them to get a piece. Well, I want my say. No, that's not what it is. They need to be coming to us, to me as your planning director, and saying, look, Michael, this is what we're thinking. This is where we're going. If they would have came to me ahead of time, we could have had Sherman Ranch on that map. Maybe it would have led to less confusion. There were some members of the public that were taken aback by when we had to go in and say, well, this piece of property right here, this 100 acres, well, this is already developed. So, they could have shown that on there, at least shown it as approved and tentative, that this is future residential and it's already approved and it's going to be going forward this year. I have some. These are some of my concerns that I've had, and I do have with the firm that's going forward and how they're going about it. And I'm bringing this up because I don't want Newman to get Livingston's general plan with Newman's name on it. And that's the way I feel this thing may turn out. And I'm concerned with that, as I think the community should be concerned with that, because this is Newman. We have our own ideas, and they need to be heard, and we need to be involved in every aspect of this project, not them just putting new names on a different somebody else's general plan. So those are my concerns that I wanted to express to you as your planning director.
Not the last one they did, Livingston, is that why you mentioned that?
I just use Livingston. To be honest with you, I don't know if they did Livingston. It's just they did Escalons, or they're doing Escalons. It could very well be Escalon for Livingston, for that matter. But it's just the fact of the matter is hey, we are unique in our setting. We are unique in our character of our community, and we are unique in the makeup of our community and the citizens of our community. And that uniqueness needs to be reflected in any document that we pay $250,000 for.
Well, so what can we do?
Have Micah call and tell him that it was unacceptable. And I mentioned to him also on that map, there wasn't landmarks were identified, that citizens could identify with, like, police station, city hall, schools, just so the general public reading that map could tell where things were. That was one of my concerns.
Yeah. And I think for the council members, I think you heard some of the reservations that the public expressed at that meeting.
Hmm.
Getting the public comfortable with this process and getting them to understand this process and making sure that they feel they're a part of their process and what their role is in the process is a very big part of this. That's how you get them to buy off on it and take ownership of it. If they're already having reservations about it after one workshop, you know,
Things weren't explained properly.
how when we get further on down the line, all we're going to hear is, well, you know, I attended those workshops and, you know, really nothing happened. You guys just handed it over to a technical advisory committee and then you went on and did what you wanted to do anyways. You know, without that education up front of how this whole thing was going to work and making them understand that, there can be these misconceptions that, you know, this thing has been predetermined. And that's an issue that we'd rather deal with now and then deal with 12 months from now when this is coming up and after we've spent all this money. So.
Yeah. What were you saying, Tom? I leaned over and asked you about the,
We had a little more negotiation with them than we do with most consultants, but I'm pretty sure that our 30-day clause stuck in the contract. And that is, you give them 30 days notice and you pay them for work performed to date.
I just can't see us having another meeting on Saturday. We're not ready for it, and I don't think you would feel comfortable having this conversation with them and them being prepared to correct the problems that exist right now.
I think some of their flaws are internal. I think even after having a conversation with them, I don't know how much it can improve. You know, I'm not trying to be a pessimist. I'm just trying to be a realist and just kind of say where we're at with these particular people. And one of my concerns again is not having the other gentleman. I think Mayor Fantasia and Councilman Parker were there, and you know, when Mr. Groves was in here speaking as part of that team, we saw how dynamic he can be and what a big part of that team he was in that interview. And when they came in and they interviewed with that committee, they said, you hire us, you're getting us too. Right here. We're on this thing. From my assessment, it's been handed off to the other gentleman that showed up at the meeting and didn't say anything. It's been handed off to him. And that concerns me as well.
I would say, Michael, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, from the sounds of it to me, and you know, I wasn't at the workshop this weekend, but from the sounds of it to me, it doesn't sound like you have much confidence at all in these guys, and you know, I just, you know, would like to see us do something, because as you say, I would sure hate to see us get 6 months down the road or something, and the people in our community are saying exactly what you said. Well, we didn't feel like we had much of an input on this deal here, and you know, and I think that would be quite a shame to the community if they felt that way. And you know, I think if you feel that uncomfortable with these folks here, and as you say, this gentleman that was the one that made these presentations and everything else, if you don't feel comfortable with these guys, we need to go ahead and make a move early on in the process as opposed to later.
There were other council members here, and I'd be curious as to what your take was on these two workshops that we did have. And you know, I've been through a few of these, and I have a pretty high level of expectation. I'll be honest with you. I have a high level of expectations on anybody who's going to work for us, and I expect that A game at all times. I think that's what we deserve, an A game. We're not settling. You know, we don't need a C student here. We're paying A dollars. You know, $250,000 is a lot of money, and so I really think we should get an A game. I just don't think we're getting an A game, and I have concerns whether or not they can produce an A game.
Yeah.
So. But anyways, I'd like to, if any council members would like to share their thoughts, am I off base on this whole thing, or?
No, I think you're
or
right on. And I think you want to call them and tell them, this is the way it's going to be. You know what needs to be done. You know what's expected of them, and this is what needs to be done, or don't even show up Saturday. We'll just start all over again. You know, and mention the other guy also. I think that's what Bob wanted to say also. He was on the selection committee, and the other gentleman was very flamboyant, and he was probably what set them over the top.
part of what bothers me, and Mike has already addressed it pretty well, I have a real hard time when I buy something, and I will tell you that I hold responsibility in that process. I was on that committee. And I feel like I bought something and didn't get it. You know, but I mean, because Mike said that, what was his name?
Michael Groves.
Michael Groves impressed me enough that I changed my mind of the group that I wanted to do this project. Because they were pretty much the last ones to talk. And up until they talked, I pretty much had my mind made up, because I found that one of the other consultants I thought was at least on a par with these folks. And if obviously the choice came between the other group and this group, and we chose this group solely for me, based on his comments. And we asked, and I believe you asked, who's going to be here? And he said, I'm going to be here, and he's going to be here. We are the principals. You're hiring us. Haven't seen him.
Like Michael said, sure.
And as far as the point of, you know, getting some feedback on what's this like compared to others, well, fortunately I was here during the first one, and I have a lot of experience in that process. And I will tell you that Saturday I was confused. I mean, I walked in there without a clue of what we were going to do, and I think most of the people didn't really understand what we were supposed to do. Half of the tables did it one way, half of the tables did it another way, in spite of what they said. And I think they just didn't give us any background. They didn't tell the people, okay, here's what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. They just said, do this. And, you know, it's like if you see a robbery and you get 10 descriptions. You know, and so you got to really be thorough when you're asking people to do something. And I just don't, I'm in Mike's court with this one. I just don't share a lot of confidence with his process. And for me, the bottom line is we're not getting what we bought.
Well, the worst part about all that, Bob, is you're confused, Michael's confused, unhappy, I'm not happy, I'm confused, and we're supposed to be in the know of this. Go to the general public. How do you think they feel coming into this? And I don't like that one bit.
Yeah.
I want them to know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. We need to stop it.
And to further expand upon what Mr. Krinclaw said, as staff, when we were at the workshop, you know, they gave everybody squares and said these represent 40 acres of residential, and we need this much residential and this much commercial. And hey, no one discussed methodology with me of how we're going to calculate. You know, they gave you projections of what we needed in terms of a population or what they thought. Nobody talked to me about what those projections were. Now, based upon my planning experience, I kind of know how they came up with those numbers, and they're flawed. You know, you're saying in 20 years we're going to be 16,000 people is what they were telling us. And that's what we need to plan for. With the build out of Sherman Ranch and Hearthstone, hey, we're at 11. 20 years they had 5,000 people. You know, and that's but the other thing is, you know, we're going to try to set that in our general plan, but you still need to, they could have talked about growth rates. What most people don't know is by just going from 3% growth rate, your population doubles in about 20 years, give or take. Just going to a simple 3.5 to 4%, your population starts doubling in about 13 years. So, you know, that compounding rate, most, you know, they didn't discuss any of that. You know, that's a key method. Most people, you know, don't understand the concept of compounding, but when you start compounding, hey, things change real fast. Do we want to double in 20 years or 13 years? That's a big difference for the community of Newman and what we look like in 20 years. You know, whether we double in 13 or whether we double in 20 or whether we double in 30. You know, so I would have thought that they should have, you know, another lack of communication with staff, that maybe, you know, they should have been consulting with us and asked us, you know, what we thought was going on with this whole thing. I could have told them our current vested maps take us to 11 to 12,000.
Yeah.
You know.
What were you gonna say?
Have we paid him anything yet, Mike?
No.
Good.
And to be even further, the technicality is we have 3 signed copies of the contract in our office. We haven't mailed it back yet. Because of this particular fact that after that first workshop there was some hesitation. We still went back and forth with the attorneys, and we just got everything signed last week. So we decided we'll just hold on to it and see how this workshop goes. So anyways, I think we're just at a point to where, hey, are we going to continue to fish or are we going to cut bait?
It sounds to me like, I mean, sounds to me anyway that, you know, the general consensus here is that people just aren't thrilled with the work that these gentlemen have been doing. You know, you're going to have to work with them very closely. And I heard you say a couple minutes ago that, you know, you don't even know if they're even capable of, you know, being, you know, to the standard that you expect. And, I mean, if you don't feel that they're capable now, I personally think that it's inappropriate for us to have to prod them to, they know what we're expecting here. We shouldn't, have to prod them. We shouldn't have to babysit them to make sure that things are done right. I mean, they should know as a common courtesy to the public, knowing how important general plans are, that the people and staff and the council and everybody needs a thorough agenda. That way people know what the heck's going on. Otherwise, people are sitting there for 3 hours wondering what the heck's going on. I would say that if you feel that uncomfortable with them, then I say we, if we have to bring it back to council, or if we give you consensus, that we will go ahead and cut these guys loose. And it'll in the short term, of course, it'll set us back a little bit. We're going to have to get a new consultant, and we're going to have to go through the process a little bit again. But boy, I think in the long run, we're going to end up with a way better general plan. I think it's well worth the 2 months or whatever it is that it's going to set us back. That's my opinion. If you feel that uncomfortable with them, I say we cut them loose.
You know, Michael, one of the things that I feel we've left some people out of the process, at least they feel they have. And I've talked to several of the people in the public, and they feel that their concerns and the things that they're interested in are not going to be the priority of that committee. And I think maybe they're going to, hopefully they come back this next time, because they feel like they're going to be left out, and that certain special interest groups are going to control the meeting more, and they're going to have what they want occur on the general plan, and the things that they'd like to see on the general plan are not going to be part of it. And I don't know, I think what you said earlier, they have to present that in a way, and so that people feel comfortable knowing that we're going to address all the issues. It's not going to be just for the developers, or it's going to be for the town itself, and not just special interest groups.
Right. Which leads me to just to, if I was a part of the planning of that workshop, one of the first things I would have done or did was, start getting these things on the table that Bob's talking about, where people have these really big concerns about our community and they want them implemented in there. How can you go and start drawing out a map if you don't know what the community's concerns are? So they were putting 1 foot ahead when they hadn't even gone on step 1. They were on step 3. Let's back up a little bit here. We want to make sure we hit every step. Because all of a sudden, if you're already going to the drawing board and drawing something out without knowing what those concerns are, how do you incorporate those concerns at that point? So,
It seems to me, and I think, if I may, Mr. Mayor, we've drawn a conclusion with a consensus. And I guess I would just speak from my former experience in being so well aware of our general plan, dating back, I guess, to about 96 when I first came on the Planning Commission. I was disappointed, because I think up until the end of the meeting, where my colleagues and I, including the mayor and Mr. Crinkline and Bob Martina, spoke, there was a resounding sound in the room of dissatisfaction. I don't think that dissatisfaction just stemmed from us as the persons specifically involved, and where ultimately the decision will be made here behind this dais, but with the public that was there, and even the interests of the developers that were there. I think the disarray has been spoken upon, and I want to commend Michael for being quite frank, and the amount of candor he used about expressing his feelings. He did it in memo form, and my colleague Mike brought it out by bringing it up for discussion. I think we've come to a resolve because, as Bob Navoy expressed, Mr. Groves was the self. And now I'm looking at this where he hasn't even been extended a contract by Quadnoff, which is not fair to us. I think if the consensus is of my colleagues is to stop this now, we can't afford to take it a spiraling down. Let's just do that. Let's give staff that direction. We had some really good applicants that came before us that we did review. We could go back through that process. It may not necessitate us taking too much extensive time to get on with it. But as you said a couple of times, Michael, $250,000 is what we're looking to spend, and we're not going to waste that kind of money. Last Saturday was quite frankly almost just a waste of time because we really didn't get anywhere. We didn't do anything. And as facilitators, which is what they are consulting us to do, that job wasn't being done. I didn't see that really being done. It was kind of like, well, what do you guys want to do today? And that just doesn't cut it. I actually didn't participate for a while. I sat back and observed. And what I observed mostly was confusion. And it wasn't any of our jobs to try to put things in order because that's why we hired this consulting firm with their expertise. And if they're not communicating to our staff, well, we're certainly not going to have someone come in our town and say, well, you know, just let the chips fall where they may. This is way too important for it to just let the chips fall where they may. So I would say let's cut our losses and let's move forward in a progressive way.
Do we want to go all that way, or do we want to contact them since you felt so strongly about Michael
Groves from
Groves? If he comes on board, we'll reinitiate the contract for a short period of time, or is that not worth it?
Well, I see it as there's 3 avenues we can go down. One, we can basically tell Quadnoff to get off their snide and get busy, and you better hurry up and hire Michael Groves. 2, I've already had conversations with Michael Groves last week because I had to know where have you been in this process? You know, what's your role? You told us you were doing this. He's like, look, they sent me a contract just 3 days ago. I can't even make heads or tails of it. I don't even know what they want me to do. It says 4 different things on 4 different pages what I'm supposed to do. And then they dictated a budget to me. I don't even know if my firm can work under those terms. He said, so we can then have conversations with Michael Groves and see if he wanted to lead a group. Or the third thing we could do is we could, the second firm that came in, they were very capable of doing it too. We could also come back and have the interview committee just have another dialogue with them and see if they're willing to come back. When I had an exit interview with them, they told me that, hey, should you have any issues, almost with foresight, that give us a call. You know, no hard feelings here. Give us a call. We'll be more than willing to come back and talk to you guys about this thing again. So.
Is the money the same?
Actually, they were cheaper. So we didn't necessarily go with the one that was the fewest dollars, but it would be about the same when we added additional things that we need done in terms of a program EIR versus a master EIR and a few pieces of municipal service reviews. So I think we would be in the same ballpark, and we could tell them that, you know, here, this is what we're working with in terms of a budget. This is what we need. Can you do it?
That's a fair assessment that you gave, Mike. I mean, you know, opportunities always lie in a second chance, but that was presented to us initially. So what we've gotten is like Mr. Navarro said, it's almost like a switcheroo. Yeah, and I have loss of trust when that's done. I mean, you know, we're basing this on the public's trust, and I can see it clearly. It'd be differently if I was blinded to it, but here we have been in this process when we first interviewed them some month ago, or actually before the new year began, and all of a sudden, this gentleman whom swayed my decision-making based on his presentation is not even a part of the collective. And I just, you know, I can't see giving rise to that, because they made, in order to save the contract, the consulting contract, yeah, we need this guy because that's going to be the guy that will actually be able to proceed with this contract with the city of Newman. And to me, it's too late for that because that was what was initially offered to us. I think we need to move forward without hesitation because I don't think we have time to wait for it all.
No, I agree. As Tim said at the end of that meeting, Michael got up and I spoke and Tim spoke, and we were trying to quell the crowd and answer questions that the consultant should have, identified at the beginning. It wasn't up to us to explain the things at the end that they should have explained in the beginning of the meeting.
The public had no confidence in us whatsoever.
No.
None.
Yeah, and once that, as elected officials, once that confidence is breached, it's hard to get it back. And again, I don't want the city to go down a path that we cannot get out of. So that's why I wanted to bring this before you and have this discussion and bring this all out on the table.
Mayor and Council, if that's the direction you want to go, this is one of those few instances where, especially at the end of a meeting, where you can add something as an emergency item. It's come to your attention after the agenda was posted, which had to be done last Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the meeting
For
Saturday.
the meeting, sure.
And there's a need for immediate action. I think there is a need because if you are going to void the contract, we should let them know tomorrow or Thursday.
Okay.
Well, I like that. I'd like to add that to our agenda. I would move for us placing the cancellation of Quad Knob's contract on the agenda immediately for emergency action.
Everybody concur with that?
Concur. Second.
Concur.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, we have everybody agreed to put this on the agenda as an emergency item?
Mhm.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now, Tim, would you like to,
Yes, I move that we immediately cancel the consulting contract with Quad Knob.
do we have a second?
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. The question for Dean. Dean, is there enough time to put a cancellation for the meeting on Saturday in the paper? Thank you so much.
We
That's okay. We can eat that cost.
Okay. Can we just put a big red cancellation right over that, or?
That's a lot better than a big red cancellation on an updated general plan.
Because the other thing is, we've already canceled it, but another one that I meant to even tell you was, in their contract, one of the selection committee or interview committee, one of their high points on this group was, hey, they got this public relations, this media aspect to it, where they're going to distribute these newsletters. Well, one of those newsletters was due before the workshop because we wanted to get people out there.
We did that.
They called me up. When I called them up and said, hey, what happened to the newsletter? Where's our agenda? They're like, we were on a planning retreat for 2 days. Sorry.
I think we've beaten that dead horse. We've moved on action.
Okay.
And
we will send out notices to everybody. I will actually physically come down to the fire station and hang out from 8:45 to 9:30 to let anybody know what has transpired.
Yeah, we have this list of addresses, whoever
Yes.
put their address on.
So you'll move right away on the on this other firm? Is that what you're going to do?
Yes, we will explore two options. We'll
bring that back to us.
Yeah. Actually, we'll try to convene the interview committee to see if they can re-interview that second group.
Michael, could I ask a question on anyone that we choose? Shouldn't there be an outline of what they're going to present at these meetings? What I'm saying is, shouldn't you have known exactly what was going to occur? Because when we got there at this meeting, they had a map there, and they said, you have 40 minutes to take the residential, commercial,
Like a test.
yeah, and industrial, and put them where you wanted them. And what I'm saying is, I think more of our town than taking 40 minutes to try to put where I feel that, I mean, it just didn't seem like it was adequate time. We were being rushed into something. So what I'm saying is,
I think anyone who attended the previous workshop and those who attend the next workshop will be surprised at the difference. I'll just leave it at that. It will be 100% better. As your planning director, I will make sure of that.
Michael, can you work with Dean on the appropriate wording for the cancellation, whatever you'd like to put
Sure.
for the reason for canceling the meeting?
Why doesn't it been fired?
Yes. Stay on your vacation, Mrs. Ramus, yes. No problem, yes. It's canceled. Okay. Mike, did you have anything else?
I did, I'd defer till later. The rest of
Okay.
it.
Bob?
No, I'd just like to thank Michael Holland for bringing this forward and give us an opportunity to do the right thing for our city, Michael, so thank you.
Charles?
Nothing.
Nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Comes back to me then.
Go ahead.
On January 6th, staff brought before us the waste treatment plant, what the projections were in the future when build-out occurs. Since then, I've talked to several of the staff members, and I'd like to open up a line of discussion with us about, I think we have a big problem brewing in the future. One of the things I found out was that projection didn't take into account pieces of property annexed into the city, and my understanding, once it's annexed, it has the rights to the sewer as a new development. So now we have a new development that once it's built out is going to take us to about 95% sewer capacity. We have properties within the city, infills, that if those are developed, we have a big problem in front of us. So I would like to first discuss among us what your feelings are about it, direct staff into looking at stopping building permits for residential and taking a look at the sewer, what we need to do on an accelerated basis to get us to that point without incurring a problem, which I really think we're going to have. So I'll open it up.
Can I take a stab, John?
Go ahead, Tim.
John has some foresight into what you're talking about a couple of years back. He took the leadership role as the mayor to have us initiate a study with a wastewater treatment plant. I think we spent about $80,000 with Carrillo. We hadn't been thoroughly satisfied, I would say. There were some figures that came back that Charles questioned in terms of how we needed to proceed. We were slapped with sanctions. Our city was slapped with sanctions because we moved from the Air Quality Board from Sacramento to Fresno, and they more or less were telling us our wastewater treatment plant and our treatment of water needed to be raised to another level. We've subsequently paid more in fees. Our last warrants included some $8,000 in fees that they've slapped us with for our wastewater treatment plant. Your question is well in line because we are well aware of it. We've initiated that. I think where your concerns lie are with our current growth, everything that's on the books. We'll be at capacity. Now, as far as limiting that, you mentioned annexing. You also mentioned infill projects, and you mentioned should we stop issuing building permits, if I'm understanding you correctly. And staff would have to correct me, but I think where we are, we're running the gamut within the next 3 to 5 years with what's currently on the books that might push us with those BODs being high, like you saw in the presentation, and we can't afford to have those go more than 2 days, from what I recall with Ernie. I think part of our general plan update is identifying that where we really aren't in a position to be able to continue to annex, continue to build, or even do infill projects beyond what we currently have on the books. And while we have what we have currently on the books, we need to expand our wastewater treatment plant and its capacity levels. The real question, I think, is where are we with that? And it should be something that should be coming up to us post-haste based on your concerns, because that's the way I understand it. And if anybody differs from that, I'd be willing to certainly hear how they've kind of come into
No, you're right,
I understand.
and, you know, the projections were, you know, in 3 years, when everything was built out, we'd be there. Well, we're hoping, that's why I went and looked at the Los Banos plant, and they've done things a lot differently over there. And the study that Corolla had submitted to us, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but we farmed that out to 2 other consulting companies, and they're reviewing those right now.
That's
To get
correct.
their input on Corolla's proposal, and those should be back, maybe they're back already, if not, they should be back pronto, and we're gonna move forward. And we're hoping to work with the state, the water board, on a plan to expand so we don't run into that problem, you know, in the meantime.
And just so that you know, we added aeration out there at one point. That was supposed to help facilitate. The wastewater treatment plant operational funds, Ernie, you may be more knowledgeable. I think we're somewhere in the $2 million range for the wastewater treatment plant operating. Is that
I mean, as far as
accurate?
available funds.
Yeah, the funding source there.
Yeah, we have room and the funds to add aerators if we need to. So I don't think we're quite not at that point, Michael, where, you know, the toilets are running over, but that's why we're gonna try to buy this time with the water board. They're the ones that have the final say, you know.
I understand that. But if it doesn't buy us the time, now we're back to where we're in trouble and we're further down the road.
Well, we're not annexing anything else until the general plan's done. So that's at least 12 months, 15, maybe even longer now since we're
Building would be
scratch.
shut down. Building would be shut down just as it was previously. It wouldn't be the first time it's occurred in this town. Ernie, maybe you can assess that a little bit, because I think previously, before the current wastewater treatment plant that you've gone out and assessed was completed, there was a developer, Renown, I believe it was,
That's correct.
and LAFCO, we had the city of Newman, Lucas Ranch had expanded, and Ernie, if you would just expand on that a little bit. This building got shut down. They couldn't build until the wastewater treatment plant was taken care of.
Back in the late 80s, early 90s, about 1990, we had a cease and desist from the Regional Water Control Board, Sacramento, and it was because we weren't meeting the discharge requirements to the river. At that time, that's where we were discharging to. We couldn't meet the suspended solids and the BODs at certain times of the year because of the algae, all the growth. We had building going on. We had Renown, as Councilman Parker just pointed out. So what they did is they allowed us to continue operating, but what they did is they set certain milestones, and they says, okay, you're going to have to go into a planned expansion, you're going to purchase additional land, you're going to put in a storage reservoir, and upon completion of such and such, you're allowed to build so many units. So the city has been through this before. At the present time, we've known that these things were coming for the last 4 or 5 years since the wastewater treatment task force has been in session. And we've discussed these issues. They're more than just the problems with flows and with BODs, but there are also salinity issues and quite a few things that need to be addressed. When Corolla was initially given that $89,000 study, they were supposed to give an assessment of our existing facilities and different alternatives as to what should be done, and depending as to how the growth of the city. That study has not been completed as of yet. It's close. It should be coming before you, I would imagine, within, another month or so, Michael? Because the last proposal that they had was, it was sent to 2 different engineers, consulting engineers, so that they can take a look at it and see if we were on the right track. We've gotten a response back from one of them. Lance Perry, the chief plant operator, and I reviewed it last week, and we're ready to meet with Michael and with our city manager so that we can discuss in some of the issues that were raised. In the meantime, we have answered the notice of violation that was issued to us for the regional board. We answered it. We told them this is what we object to. We believe that you have too much extensive monitoring and testing and other issues that we were concerned with. Same way with trying to determine the sinking of additional monitoring wells to determine degradation of the groundwater and to determine groundwater gradient, which we had already established long ago. So this is why we were objecting to that. We haven't gotten a response back from them as of yet. The ball is in their court. It was sent to them some time ago. In the meantime, Michael Holland came up in talking with the Public Works Director with Los Banos. We went on a tour over there, and we were informed that they were able to get an extension to get additional treatment for their plant without going to any sophisticated treatment, and continue expanding ponding and irrigation, etc., up to their permitted capacity. So Michael says, well, why can't we do that? Let's take that same approach and go to the board and say, look, we've got a permitted capacity up to 1.69. We're only going to be at 1.4. But at the same time, why don't we ask for a little bit extra, maybe go to 2.25, 2.5? And in the meantime, we're not going to lose sight of what you want us to do, you know, that ultimate treatment that they want with, whether it's activated sludge, tertiary treatment or whatever, but the price tag is, what did they say, 23 million? Well, give us a little chance to, you know, I mean, we'll keep an eye on that, but give us some time to get there, to be able to come up with a plan as to how we're going to get there. In the meantime, we need to stay in operation. We need to keep our city going. And so this is the approach that we're taking. And but at the present time, until that Corolla report, that presentation comes before you, I don't think that there's too much that we can discuss at this time.
So, and just so that I understand too, listening to what you just explained better for Mr. Crinkloff, we're in violation when we get up to those numbers, is what I'm understanding, by the Quality Air Board. What Los Banos has done is being able to get some exception to where the standard is for when they would be out of compliance. Is that correct, Ernie?
They were, Los Banos, when they did their original permit, used some foresight. What I mean by that is they designed their plant for 3.5 million gallons, but they asked for 4.2. So they're permitted to 4.2. So now they got this extra 700,000 gallons that they get to expand and still be under their permit level.
Right. So they can expand and add another pond.
Correct.
And that's what we're looking for. We have the land out there. We've just been regulated to say, well, you cannot exceed this currently. So the expansion can take place. And the presentation that we got was the $23 million. And you have to know, we did an assessment and we raised our rates in our town. That was part of this overall expansion talk. But we did an assessment to raise them up where I don't think it had been touched in the last decade or so. But there are some people that were impacted more than others, maybe seniors and people that are on fixed income. If I'm hearing everything correctly, there is something that we should be seeing within a month and a half at our council meeting, giving us this overall assessment that I think that will address your concerns a little better. And I'm just going from the knowledgeable base of having had this as an issue concurrently with the current growth patterns that we've been dealing with.
Mayor, if I may attempt to summarize what I think I heard Councilman Crinkloff say. When I did my presentation, I talked about all entitled properties which are approved subdivisions in our city, which was basically the Ranchwood subdivision, Stevens Ranch or Park Estates, Hearthstone, Marquez Manor, and Sherman Ranch. And then I took numbers and projected what our flow rates were going to be. And that flow rate is how much water is coming into your treatment plant. And those projections indicated that we're about at our operational capacity. We still have room for our permitted capacity. There's still some freeboard space, if you will. It's an engineering term. That just means we can handle more water. But from an operational, we really don't want to go too much more, because then our treatment plant starts taking on some inefficiencies through the operation. What I think I hear Councilman Crinclaw saying is, I don't think he meant annexations, but what he's talking about are, as you know, there are vacant properties within our land. As we did our housing element, there's about 80 acres of vacant land in the community that's already annexed, already zoned. If a project comes in and it's permitted project under the zoning, you just basically write out a building permit, go through architecture review, and away you go. There are some multifamily properties within our community that when you compile those 80 acres and you do, maybe there's a triplex here or an eightplex here, or I think he's saying is when you compound those infill lots, it could create some issues for us down the road. And what we're talking about again is the build out of Sherman Ranch, Hearthstone Ranch, and I gave you a time frame of 3 to 5 years, and that's under current market conditions. So I think that's what I heard Councilman Crinclaw saying. So
Right.
I don't know if that helped the conversation at all, but
If every acre in town, if they came to town tomorrow and wanted to build on it, we couldn't handle it.
that's correct.
If they came to town tomorrow and wanted to build.
If everything-
On every single lot in town.
And
is
there's
what-
some of them we can't stop. We can't stop. They can build
Yeah,
if they want to.
right.
The other thing that bothers me is if we start getting up to that level to where it's pretty thin as far as capacity, we're then telling any industry that wants to come to town, sorry, we can't accommodate you.
We already know any wet industry we can't accommodate anyway, at all. Any new
Small wet industries, a beautician shop, a restaurant, not necessarily a large wet one, a small one. All the new, what's going in patches, those places are could be limited, because we're gonna be
What-
so short.
What are the stats on like a business like that, Michael? What's
They vary, but you get some of the small businesses that Councilman Crinclaw would be talking about. He's correct. These restaurants, there's a lot of washing of dishes and those types of things that go on that generate wastewater. Any idea what a restaurant would generate on an average day? I mean, we could do a report for you and bring some of these numbers back if you wish. Laundromats, that would use up a lot of water on a daily basis. That wouldn't be a wet industry. That most people, when you conjure up an image of a wet industry, you think Damari washing all their stuff, or Veggie Cool washing all their stuff, or
water flowing
F&A.
24 hours?
Yeah, they're smaller ones, but by themselves not that much. But if you put them together incrementally and you get 4 or 5 or 6, it could be an impact. We're not saying it's a huge impact like F&A, but there is some gallons that are going to be created and flowing down those sewer pipes. If Ernie, if you concur with that.
Yeah, and even the Mari doesn't use that much water because they recycle it all, and they recoup it and reuse it because they chlorinate it.
Right.
And a lot of the other stores, well, all they have is a bathroom, and they go home, so during the nighttime that's when all your heavy flows go out to the treatment plant in the late evenings when everybody's taking a shower and washing clothes and doing dishes and stuff as such.
The preponderance of the businesses that we're going to get, like in the business park, are, you got a toilet in the back and they have 5 employees and whatever they use. That's probably going to be the dominance of what we get until we get a large land user that might come in. And that would obviously, if they're going to be a heavy water user, take an expansion.
Yeah, but we do share your concerns, Councilman, at least I do. And I'm looking forward to getting that report completed. And when they do, then I can really have more input. At the present time, without that being completed in the presentation, That's why our wastewater task force hasn't even met yet.
Waiting for those reports back.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll sit still until that comes back, and then
Okay.
I'll be back.
Well, I concur with Mike, but you know, what Mike's saying is we need a cushion, you know, and we all know it, and shame on us for getting to where we're at now and have these concerns, you know, so, we know what we have to do, and we just have to go out and do it, and, that's it. We'll wait for your report.
Okay?
Thank you, gentlemen. Mike, did you have anything else?
That's enough, isn't it?
Hey, it's up to you. The only other thing I'd like to announce is this Thursday night, there's a chamber mixer at Cottonwood Quilts and Gitlet Canna Company, which is the former Crickets, but it was called, what was it called? Pins and Needles before. They've moved around the corner of Fresno and Maine. 6 o'clock, everyone's welcome. First chamber mixer of the year. Hope everybody can make it. And that's all I had. Would somebody like to make
So
a motion
moved.
to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.